Yeah. I'm sorry, one more time, please. You know, we're going to give us a second here. So the question was, how much is the stadium uncertainty playing a part in the future of camp? Very little, when you think about it. If you just look at, Sam's here, so I'll say it, but timeline. If you just look at the timeline, the reality is, you know, we're going to be in our stadium through 31. So the fact is, you know, as long as we're there, there's a good chance we'll be here. So that's really the plan, and then we'll make a decision after that. Yeah, I know it sounds redundant and boring for you guys, but you know exactly what I've said in the past. I'm going to say again, which is we continue to make progress. We've had more meetings, we've had more discussions. I said this last time we talked, but you know at this point it's literally you're taking an agreement this long and whittling it down to okay, this paragraph, and in this paragraph this line. Are we in agreement on this? And we're doing that on both sides. And you know, you're in that process, so you're not sure exactly how everything's going to go. Some of them are tough, big decisions that you got to put a pin in, and we'll come back to that, and let's go on to the next one. And we're in the middle of both sides of the state line with that. And as I said before, I'll say it again, like the commitment on both sides has been really, really humbling. There's a real interest to figure this out on both sides of the state line, and that gives us a great opportunity to figure out what's best for our fans and for the organization.
Mark, I wonder if it's possible to describe in what ways, if any, the options at the Truman Sports Complex look different today than what the renderings were that you guys provided a year or two ago. I mean, does that continue to evolve and how you look at what those possibilities might be?
Yeah, I think it has to continue to evolve. Two things impact that. To answer your question directly, Vahe. The first would be that CSL study that we did where we talked to thousands and thousands of our fans. And we talked to them about both options, in particular on the renovation side. We got a lot of good feedback. It was it was interesting feedback. Some things sort of opened our eyes to what was really important to them. So we've incorporated some of those as we continue to revise that design. I would say that most of the feedback from fans is related directly to the stadium experience. So in stadium, I'd like to see this, this, or this, or in stadium, I've been to this stadium at another NFL team, they have this, could we incorporate that? It's been, the majority of that feedback was in stadium. I think I've said this to you guys before, but you know, their big three were, you know, make sure it's loud, make sure that tailgate is as good, if not better, in either option. And then the humbling one was, you know, there was a very, very high level from the survey of we trust the Chiefs to do the right thing. So that's humbling, but it's also, you know, that creates even more pressure on the responsibility to get it right. So that's one of the reasons we're taking the time.
It's beyond the in-stadium stuff. How do you continue to, I guess, just evaluate and judge what you might be able to do around it?
Yeah, so that's the second part of the answer to your first question, which is obviously we got to figure out what happens with the Royals. So is that stadium there? If it's not there, when is it not there? And then you can figure out what you can do. We can make all the plans we want, but there are a lot of things that go into that that we aren't a part of, right? The county's talking to the Royals about what happens next if they go. So what we've tried to do is control what you can control, prepare for what you can prepare for, and then make sure you have options. And I know that's a word you guys have heard from me before. So.
From the outside, it looks like there's maybe a clearer path to building a stadium. Wouldn't disrupt anything that would be currently going at Arrowhead, and wouldn't require, you know, a vote from Jackson Countyans. But if you do decide to stay and renovate the Truman Sports Complex, what would be the main deciding factors in that choice?
Yeah, Stephen, I'd say this. Our job and the team around me job is to get the two best possible potential partnerships figured out, down to the detail. And at that point, we're going to go to the Hunt family and say, okay, here are your options. What do you want us to do? And they'll decide, and they'll ask for our input. And then we'll go do that better than anybody else. So that's our strategy. And that's what we're working towards. And that's why you hear so much of like both sides. I'd say to answer your question of what could make the difference is it's the detail of those deals. Like what deal makes the most sense from a business perspective, from a future perspective. And I think it's important to point this out. What makes the most sense for our fans for the next generation? Right? There are a lot of really strong arguments on both sides. But we have to make that decision, what we believe makes the best impact on our fans for the next generation. Mm-hmm.
Would their decision, if it were to come sooner rather than later, how much would that provide clarity that maybe you guys do need to actually go to the family and say, these are our options now, because the Royals have made their choice?
Yeah, Nate, that's a really logical question. I think that it's got to have some impact, right? Because it makes clear at least one option. I will say this, we're big fans of the team over there and the people involved in that team. I would say, and I've said this as well, they're going through the same process we are, so we actually respect that it takes time and it takes effort and a lot of meetings, a lot of things you can't control, a lot of things you can't control from a timing perspective. I think to specifically answer the question, it's when you look at once they make a decision, okay, so if they go one way, then, okay, what happens to the Truman Sports Complex then? What does that create from an opportunity standpoint from us, from a control standpoint? You got to think about if we're the only tenant, like that creates some flexibility for us that we haven't had in the past. So there are things we got to take into account. If they decide something else where they're staying, you know, what if they extend? Well, if they extend, how does it impact us? Like, could we do a renovation at the same time frame if they're still operating a baseball team there? So that factors in. The one thing that we have sort of flushed out and feel confident in saying is if they decide to go to Kansas, it doesn't really have an impact on us and our ability to go to Kansas. They're two different projects. The way that the Star Bonds work, you're basically funding your own project. So we feel like that could happen and it wouldn't have an impact on us. So back to the options, I think all the options are in play. We've stayed in close consultation with them on just where are you and what's your time frame. But other than that, we both agreed that it's better for both of us to be separate.
Or could you make the decision before or?
Impossible to answer that question because I have no idea what their timing is. So I can't tell you that. I will say this, we're going to take the time we need to make the right decision. And a lot of that fact, you know, there are moving parts here. And you got to get all those moving parts to line up at the right time. But look, we're closer than we've ever been. That's sort of the objective, is each day get a little closer. And we've been able to do that.
So you're not intentionally, once you guys have the information you need,
No. Mm-mm. No, and that's one of the benefits of going your own way and being on two different paths is we're focused on what we're doing and how we do it. With the exception of what I mentioned before, if for some reason we're renovating and they're staying, that has an impact. But no, we wouldn't hold up an announcement to cut to them.
Is there any communication between you and the Royals about this at all?
You know, very little. We're not talking deal points. We're not talking about, you know, what they're doing or what they're not doing. It's more checking in on are they continuing down path, but it's very limited.
Is there any frustration from your end on the way things have been handled by Jackson County or Kansas City?
I wouldn't say frustration. I think understanding. You know, this has been 5.5 years of a lot of people in our organization's lives. And it's also been quite an education for us as to how two different states work, how a county works, how a city works, how a state legislature works. And we've gained a better understanding of there are a lot of challenges in what they do in the day-to-day. Obviously, when you're talking about Jackson County, they've got a lot to deal with right now. We have to respect that, but be respectful in our discussion with them that we got to keep going here. So who are we talking to? And what can we talk about? And are we on the same page we were in the last conversation? I would say this from Jackson County perspective, the folks we're talking to are really excited about figuring something out with us. It's going to take a little bit to get that done. They got to go through their process with what's going on there. But we're going to continue our conversations.
All right, so we're gonna go. We'll start off with that.
Mark, the Kingdom documentary comes out here pretty soon. I'm excited for everyone to see what you've been working on for the last year.
Yeah, it's been a really exciting project. So for those of you who don't know, Foolish Club Studios was launched after the Hallmark movie that we did, and this will be its first major project in conjunction with Disney Plus and ESPN, and it's another effort to continue to grow the brand and put more content out there. What I'm most excited about is, we got, as you would imagine, we got approached last year before the season by a number of different major Hollywood and film companies wanting to track our season. And we went back to the folks who did Michael Jordan's Last Dance and said, what if we did it with two parallel paths, one being tracking the season with access we've never given before, and then a parallel path of charting the history of the Kansas City Chiefs and Lamar's impact on sports and the NFL in particular. And I would tell you, I've seen the whole thing now, and it does an amazing job of following both of those paths. You'll see a lot of folks talking about, well, the season didn't end the way we wanted it to. We had to make a decision going into this process that we were going to tell a story, and we were going to hopefully accomplish history, which we did by being the first team ever to be in 3 straight with a chance to win the 3rd in a row, but also tell the story of this franchise. And I think the way they combine the two is going to be really, really interesting for our avid fans as well as our worldwide fans. And one of the reasons we're on Disney Plus and ABC and ESPN is the worldwide distribution. When you think about the World's Team and what we're doing, there is some strategy behind and some taking advantage of opportunities. We think about what the NFL has done with the Chiefs and how they've increased and gone global. When you look at the first ever worldwide stream game, it's Kansas City Chiefs. When you look at this year's game in Sao Paulo, the fact that it'll be on YouTube worldwide for free, it's an amazing opportunity for the NFL, and we're right in the middle of it. Now, there are a lot of reasons we're in the middle of it, but for us, it's a great opportunity.
Mark, how about just an update on the progress of the 10 seats at Arrowhead?
Yeah.
As a follow-up, is it just kind of happy coincidence that you have one home preseason game that's the last one, giving you time to get it all in?
Yeah. So the seat project for the World Cup has been on schedule, on budget, and as I've said before, exceeded my expectations. I think those of you who had the opportunity to see it, when you've been at this organization, I've been here for 17 seasons, and you've lived in that building, it's a little shocking to see big holes blown into the seats, which is what we had to do. And when you're in that process, you're hopeful that it goes right, but it's pretty amazing. Clark was very adamant, even before we committed to World Cup, that if we're going to do this, I want every single one of our season ticket members, every single one of our fans who have a seat on that side to be able to sit in their seat for every single Chiefs game. So figure it out. They got to be in those seats. You got to build a field that you can take those seats out. And when you've actually seen the seats, they're the actual seats, and they're in the same spot. It's just on a modular system that we can actually take out. So they were taken out. We put the modular system in. It's in place. We'll take it out again for the World Cup, and then we'll put it back in and play 2 full seasons like that. And then based on our decision, we'll decide what to do next. But everything's been on schedule and on budget and really, really looks great.
Marcus?
Mark, you talked a lot about the history with your St. Joe, the history of the Chiefs, as part of the reason fan base is what it is. How much of the staging process is finding reasons not to lose, but also making the right business decision?
I think it's much more making the right business decision, the right decision for our fans. It's not about, look, we don't want to leave, but we may find a better option in the future and decide to do that. That's kind of what we're doing with the stadium right now. We may, and we may not. I think what makes this thing special is we've got a great partnership with the people who spoke today. And they understand the impact that a training camp can have on St. Joe. And I'll go back to where I opened, which is, if you're sitting in these seats in 2009 and 10, I think you could ask some fair questions about what kind of impact could this have on St. Joe. And you look at it today, 15 years in, it's measurable, and it's exceeded everyone's expectations. And we're proud of that. But we also believe that's what we bring to the table. It's like we can bring something that can change and have impact. And if you look at the history of this, we've done that. So we believe we can do that again, or we can continue here. I will say this. I have an amazing team around me. And as president of the organization, I'm humbled by the privilege that Clark and his family have given me, but it's a huge responsibility to do that job. When you put this on top of that job, you really count on the people around you. And they have all stepped up. I mean, all these things I'm talking about, all the success we've had, all those measurables have been driven by a lot of really talented people. So it's given me the ability to take a step back from that and really focus where I need to be focused right now, and that's this project. So I don't think, my wife might argue that it keeps me up at night. I don't think it keeps me up at night. It definitely is a huge responsibility, but we look at it as a huge opportunity. Clark, I've shared this story before. We sat down in a room, we first started talking about this, and we were looking at all the options. And this was before even the thought of star bond extension or anything like that. It's just like, okay, here we are. We got to figure this out. What's going to happen in 31? And he sat down with a group of us, and he said, look, the people in this room are going to make the most impactful decision in the history of this organization. Pregnant pause. Don't screw it up. But I'm trusting you guys to advise me on what we think we should do. And, it's been 4.5, 5 years of doing the due diligence, doing the work, negotiating the deals, starts and stops, big steps backwards, working your way back. So it's been quite a process. I'm really happy with where we are. I'm really happy with the relationships we've developed and the opportunities that are in front of us.
We're going to go last three. Matt, Saylor, Bob.
Mark, during the Club World Cup, there was some criticism from players about the key specific locations, led to some speculation that FIFA might consider moving outdoor locations to indoor locations. Has there been any feedback from FIFA about that and how that the Club World Cup concerns might impact either games at Arrowhead or Kansas City Stadium or training?
Yeah, I think that they'll take all that into consideration. There have been no discussions about any major changes. I think the biggest impact you probably see is some scheduling, times of the day, things like that. But you're going to have weather issues no matter where you go, no matter when you go. I think it's really important, and probably more important, the surface decisions and what they're playing on. And our team's done a great job of installing even more infrastructure to create the absolute perfect surface for soccer. Yeah, we're really proud of this. And again, I go back to 9, 10 for those of you who are here. This organization's come a long way, and a lot of it is the success of this football team and Hall of Fame coach, Hall of Fame tight end, Hall of Fame quarterback, Hall of Fame defensive tackle, 5 of the last Super Bowls. But a lot of it's the work that goes on behind the scenes to have the right plans and the right programs and the right process in place. And so the NFL tracks fan base. And it's a combination of your primary fan base and your secondary fan base. And they rank every single NFL team. And you can imagine, in 2009 and 10, we were looking up a long way to get into the top 10. As great as our fans are, you have the challenge of a smaller market, you have a challenge of not being real successful in the field. And, we've been able to do things off the field, innovative-wise, marketing-wise, the movies, the things like that have created much more, a bigger fan base. But the cool thing about it for us and our strategy is that, one of the reasons we're number one is we're a worldwide fan base now. And so the combination of that, for the first time ever, we surpassed some of the biggest teams out there, and we're the largest fan base in the NFL.
Mark, as you continue to sort of cultivate data, or however you express it, to present to Clark and the Hunts on, do you have any sense of Clark's inclinations, or do you feel like he's purely open-minded? I know he's got sentiment about Arrowhead, obviously. Is that anything you can share about their state of mind, his state of mind?
Yeah, I would say this. Clark's probably the most methodical guy I've ever worked with. He makes me better because I'm not the most methodical guy. And he's been extremely methodical in this whole process. I mean, there have been days when I'll walk out of a meeting saying, if we get that, we got to go this direction. And then I'll walk out of a meeting on the other side and say, okay, we got that, we can go this direction. And he just stays steady through the whole thing. He's expressed his sentiment for what a special place GHA Field is, and he's also expressed a very willing openness to look at other options. There was a meeting early on with the siblings where we talked about, hey, are we going to go down this path? And this was important for me to understand, like, I don't want to do all this work and then have you guys say we'll never leave. But I won't go into the details of the individuals, but there was hey, are we good? Should we look at all our options? And one of the siblings said, well, would Dad want us to stay? And one of the siblings said, Dad was the one who moved us from Texas. I think he'd be okay. He wants us to make the best decision. And then another sibling said, Dad would want us to do what's best for our fans. And that encapsulates Lamar, but it's also the understanding of those children of Lamar that it's about our fans, and it's about giving them the best experience for the next generation. Thanks, guys.